Welcome to my channel, Train, Don't Strain with me, Mountain Jace. In this series, I want to demonstrate exactly how to target a muscle using the core tenets I expounded in my earlier Foundations of Fitness videos. If you haven't yet had a chance to watch them, I strongly encourage that you do. They will revolutionize the way you approach your gym training sessions. So, what I'll show you today is me hitting the quads to ensure I go deep into the debilitation zone. This is the zone by which you have micro-torn so many muscle fibers that the body is forced to triple B, build back better. This workout is especially important because we use the quads frequently under a myriad of circumstances throughout a normal day. It's vital for running, jumping, climbing, etc. But before I show you the video of me training, I want to highlight a number of key technique points that must be respected if you want to go from only getting 10 to 20% of the gains available, which unfortunately most people do, to reaching the kind of levels that will guarantee over time you build a stronger and fitter body. It's also worth reminding ourselves that, as in any sport, be it tennis, golf, swimming, etc., making sure that one learns the core techniques necessary to excel is a crucial part of the process. Working out is no different. If you don't perfect the optimal way of doing things, you'll consign yourself to failure. So, as with all exercises, there are a few elements that make the difference between simply fake training and commanding your body to build back better. The first extremely important element to note is that on every machine or workout exercise, there are usually 2 points at which people throw away great chunks of performance gains, by which I mean they avoid engaging the muscle. In fact, they all but do the exact opposite and let it rest. They do this by injecting momentum into the weight they are using when its downward gravitational force is not on the muscle but is going through their bones. I fully explain what I mean about this in my Stairway to Heavenly Gains video, which is episode 9 of the Foundations of Fitness. So, on the machine I'm using to work the quads, when the pad is pointing vertically downwards, even though my leg is touching it, almost all the force of the weight on the stack is being supported by the metal bar that this pad is connected to. So, what almost everyone does is take advantage of this relative weightlessness to accelerate the pad along its upward path. Because the machine is bearing the nominal weight, this, at least for the first 20% of the range, requires very little muscle usage. Therefore, because the muscle fibers are barely being used, and certainly not enough to induce the body to repair and enhance, 1/5 of all potential gains are thrown away right from the get-go. And it gets worse. Anyway, to avoid this, you must not let the pad go beyond the vertical during each return to the start position, but stop it a fraction before this. Then, you must not accelerate through great chunks of muscle fiber, but make sure every one of them takes a turn in working to make the pad rise. You do this by keeping a slow and very constant pace from start to finish. I'll show you exactly what I mean in a moment. At the finish, which is just slightly below the horizontal plane, to avoid crushing your knee joints, you must pause under control for a millisecond before starting to bring the weight back down again. I say bring because the mistake that everyone makes is to use this portion of the exercise to let their muscle rest as gravitation naturally pulls the pad lower. This is where people lose another 50% of the potential gains available to them. We can all agree that if you're doing nothing other than letting the pad push your legs back to the start position, then your muscles aren't working. And when they're not firing and burning tons of oxygen, your body has zero reason to build back better. So you must control the negative descent at all times. Any disconnection between the muscle and the force of the weight you're training with means that your body starts counting from zero in terms of what it sees happen to then send the order to repair a muscle with enhanced performance. So if you don't raise the pad at a constant pace, avoiding accelerating at the very beginning of the positive move, and then take the pad down slowly on the negative, there is absolutely no way you can achieve more than a 30% return on your fitness investment, which is far too little to induce the body to create bigger, stronger muscles. Then, if you wait around 4 to 5 minutes playing on your phone between each set, so that you get no compounding effect of forcing the body to enlist the help of the second and third tier of muscle fibers, as I explain in episode 6 of my Foundations of Fitness series called Seek and Destroy, at the end of, say, 3 sets, you'll only ever have achieved 1/3 of a third of the gains you could have had. That's not enough to structurally incite enhanced future performance. Finally, and if you ignore this, you won't even get that meager reward, make sure your knee is directly above the edge of the seat. Otherwise, all that you are doing is creating a fulcrum point, by which I mean the bone in your leg, because it is fixed, acts as a pivot in exactly the same way a seesaw works. I see 90% of people cheat this way. They lower their body mass whilst also pulling down on the handles they're holding to make their feet, and thus the pad, go up. Then they relax so that the force of the pad pushes their legs downwards, which results in their bums rising off the seat in preparation for their next repetition. This seesaw action is very efficient at making it look as though you're training the quads, but in reality you're using almost no muscle fibers, and thus the brain has no reason to build back better. It's a total waste of your time and will do nothing to make you bigger and stronger. If I put 2 1-ton weights on either end of a seesaw, then adding a feather to the one on the right will cause it to descend and make the other end rise, even though it has a 1-ton barbell on it. A feather, that's not going to make you fit. Anyway, let me show you what I mean in real life training.
Okay, so the first thing you will notice is that I'm pushing my knee joint as far back against the edge of the seat as possible. As I said, this is to ensure that the knee opens and closes thanks to the power exerted by my quad muscles, rather than me creating a seesaw action pivoting around my upper leg bone, which means that when I drop my body weight, the other end, the pad touching my shins, goes upwards. So you'll see I avoid throwing the pad heavenwards at the start of the movement, but instead instruct my quads to raise it at a uniform speed until I stop just before my legs are horizontal. Then, using the 1:3 ratio, which means however long it took me to complete the positive up section of the move, I make sure it takes me 3 times as long to do the negative or down part. Notice how at all times I'm in control of the weight. There is no free falling, no momentum swinging, and no mass displacement as my arse rises and falls. This is the cheat train that most people resort to. All there is full engagement through the entire positive and negative ranges. Also, only the section from my knee down to my feet is moving. And again, I'm certainly not rocking my own mass to make the weight rise and fall. The first set takes 1 minute, 20 seconds of non-stop muscle firing. And something that seems few people pay attention to as proof of how well they are training, and as a consequence of this, I'm already breathing heavily as my lungs fight to replenish my blood's oxygen deficit. I highlight why this is the number one way to confirm you're training and not cheating in episode 8 of my Foundations of Fitness. So I'm taking a quick drink of my amino acid mix, getting ready to do my second set. Okay, for this one I'm going to change the camera angle just to add another perspective. So I'm getting in position, putting my feet under the pad. Note that I'm not letting the pad go beyond the vertical at the low point. If I did, I could use a small amount of energy to send the momentum of the weight higher, because the metal arm connected to the pad is actually holding all the gravitational force of the weight I've selected. Evidently, as I explained in episode 6 called Seek and Destroy, if I have truly torn great chunks of muscle fibre in my previous set, then now it must be the case that I'm unable to do as much work in this one. And that is what has happened. My quads are burning, my lungs are heaving, and my performance output is declining. In other words, everything that shows I've hit the muscle to the point of debilitation is happening before your very eyes. If this isn't happening to you when you train, for example, you keep adding more weight after every set, which means in your mind it's possible to get stronger even as you claim to have forced your muscle fibers into a broken state, then you're faking it, which just won't make it. Certainly as far as earning increased strength and endurance. So I'm just recovering. As you can see, my stomach is involuntarily opening and closing as my lungs expand and contract to pull in more air. That is the sign that you've exerted a muscle deeply. So I'm just about to take up my position for the third set. So that one was a little quick. That beginning was, and it's often the case in the very first one, until you lock in the position, which I now have done. See, my knees are tight against the pad. I've lost a great deal of strength because of the previous sets. Again, I'm accelerating a little bit too much on the up move here. But at least I'm controlling the weight on the down and not going behind the horizontal, which on this machine is possible. And look how much I'm breathing. Only way that can be true is if my muscles have burnt oxygen. So, I've done the job I set out to do, which is to tear a great chunk of the quad muscles. That micro tearing is the catalyst for the body to then build back better. So to finish off, I reduce the weight from 66 kilograms to 20 kilograms and do some very strict single leg raises. This helps engage the muscle at the top of the quads where the legs join the hips. As you can see, I'm trying to keep my legs as straight as possible because so much of the muscle fiber is now in a broken state. If I open that joint when I'm standing, then there's quite a good chance I'll actually collapse onto the ground. Again, that's a sign that you have worked the muscle. Quick drink of my amino acids. And now single leg. Pushing my knee in, making sure that there is no chance of creating a seesaw. The pivot point would be just above the knee. As you see, the top part of my body from my hips onwards, my shoulders, my head, they aren't moving up and down. I'm holding onto the machine just to keep my body static, but I'm not bringing energy into the machine. I'm just using it to maintain my body position. Up, slowly down, and then before it gets to the vertical, start again. Now my quads are really burning. And again, it's the leg I'm doing, so that confirms that I'm hitting the muscle. I'm having to support my body weight there through my arms. Keep my arms straight, so I'm not actually using any muscle. I'm just holding my body weight through my bones, the very thing that most people do when they train. Again, I've moved the camera one last time, just in case there's an additional perspective that will help. So, again, very lightweight, around 20 kilograms, one-legged, breathing, making sure my knee is hard against the pad, get that my shoulder and the center of my quads in line, which means I have to lean slightly to the direction that the leg I'm training is. And now I'm moving down, not dropping it. That's engagement. The weight naturally will just go straight down. If I do nothing at the up point, the weight will just drop. So if you're seeing that with your weights, that means you're not engaged. I made a slight adjustment there. I could feel that I wasn't hitting the quads fully, so I made a slight adjustment. But again, look at my shoulder level, my head level. There's nothing else moving. From my hips downwards, I'm fixed. My shoulders are fixed. It's just the knee is moving. Again, breathing very heavily now. That's the sort of intensity of breathing that you need to attain to know that you're getting as much benefit from each exercise as is possible for your body. Again, I'm taking that line, which means in this case, I'll lean a little bit to my right. Slowly up, and then take the weight down. Don't let gravity take it down. I don't get paid for what gravity does. I get paid for what I do. Going up, and 3 times as long on the down move. If you do this, your strength will increase massively because you're engaged. You're getting compound effect on both every repetition you do, but also compounding from positive to negative range change. Going down, you can see my upper body now is rising and falling as my lungs are desperate to replace the oxygen that I've burnt, confirming that I'm hitting the muscle. I can hardly stand on that leg at the moment until the body creates the temporary repairs that it does. Then I'm liable to actually fall if I ask that muscle to do anything in the real world. So that's how to train the quad using my evolutionary techniques as fully explained in my Foundations of Fitness series, in which I have 10 episodes that break down all the key components. If you can have the courage to make the shift away from cheat training to this style of training, within a relatively short period of time, you'll see huge increases both in power and performance. Of course, what will almost certainly happen is that as you attempt to make the adjustments I've outlined here, you'll have to cut your weight, maybe even by 50%. The simple reason being, previously you were incorporating a multitude of cheats, i.e. mass displacement, creating a seesaw, dropping the weight on the negatives, etc. So it's not just a case of making the adjustment and you'll be strong. If you make the adjustments, it'll appear that you've become a lot weaker. But that's actually proof that now you're on the road to getting fit, because now you've isolated one muscle and you've trained it into the debilitation zone, both on the positive and negative. When you do that, your body will reward you with increased fitness as it builds back better. Anyway, good luck and see you next time. Bye.